Now, I'm born and raised from Chicago, so my voice kind of carries anyway. So, but I will use the microphone. So as people come in, hopefully they're going to grab those 2 handouts that I have in the back of the room there. And we will go ahead and get started as people will begin to continue to trickle in. So my name is Tiffany Smith, and I am here to talk to you guys about generational differences and how it can impact how people buy, therefore is going to impact how we sell to people as business owners. So just a little bit about our objectives today. So we're first going to define what those generations are. Then we're going to look at those population differences. We'll finally go into distinguishing certain defining characteristics of each of those generations. We'll understand the consumer and buying process and then determine the best ways to reach customers and build long-lasting consumer relationships based on these generational differences. So the reason I chose this topic is because people always hear about Generation X and millennials and baby boomers and all of that great stuff. But we don't look at what these differences are and how they can affect how they buy, how they need to be promoted to, how the customer care is affected because of these generations. So hopefully I can give you some insights so that it can help you out with that. So one of the handouts that if you grab on that back table there is this slide, defining the generations. So this is something I wanted to make sure everyone takes home with them so they can see this well beyond this presentation. One thing I hate is when they just give you the years, like you know what people's ages are. Like, who knows what people's ages are? So I wanted to make sure that I gave you what those current individuals' age ranges are so that you know who we're dealing with. If you have a business, hopefully you have identified your target market and have broken down your consumers by age so that this will make this a lot easier for you. So obviously our greatest generation and our Gen Alpha are our oldest and our youngest of the population. So we're not going to focus on them as much because they're not really buying stuff like the folks in the middle are. So our greatest generation are the folks that's 97 to 123 years old. So if I make it to 123 years old, I hope I am living my best life. Here, Gen Alpha, these are our babies all the way up to age 11. So also not out there making money, parents still making decisions for them. But the great thing about Gen Alpha is with the internet, YouTube, children are actually selling to children. So I think that's something that we haven't had necessarily in all the generations. So you've got these little kids that are recommending toys and things on YouTube to other kids. So very different than what we've had in our past where adults are always marketing towards children or marketing towards the parents of children. Now we're actually entering a time where kids are actually marketing to other little kids. So the silent generation are our folks that's currently ages 79 through 96 years of age. So there are some 79-year-olds that's still running around, moving around. I have a great aunt who is 88. She is still driving, living on her own, and living her best life. But as these people age, decisions are starting to be made for them. So, of course, their children, their grandkids may be making decisions for them if they can't do it on their own. Our baby boomer generation, we hear a whole lot about. Those folks are ages 60 to 78. Some are still working, some are retired. So we'll talk a little bit more about them. Generation X, I am part of this illustrious generation, ages 44 to 59 years old. Many of us are still working. Generation Y, also known as millennials. The millennials are currently 28 to 43 years old. So they're out of college, in working years, and most of them are waiting a lot longer than usual to get married, have kids, and do some of those traditional things that people expect of them. Generation Z, we hear a lot about Generation Z, and the next slide will tell you why we hear so much about Generation Z. These are the folks that are 12 to 27 years of age, so they're teens, and they're going through college and into their first careers. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Gen Alpha is our small guys, our little kids. So this also is another dramatic slide that I wanted to make sure everyone had the opportunity to take home with them. So this is on the back side of the generation slides. And the reason is this. For so long, we have been told that the baby boomer generation is the largest generation out there, right? And we need to focus all these services and goods towards that generation. But as you can see, who is now the largest? The millennial generation, or Generation Y. So they are 72 million strong, and they're in those peak earning years, they're making money, and therefore a lot of our products and services are going to be geared toward this large group of individuals. Obviously, Generation Z, still 69 million, but my generation, Generation X, sometimes we are called the forgotten generation. The reason is we are sandwiched between two larger generations than our own. So we've got the baby boomers at 70 million. We've got this millennial generation that's 72, almost 73 million folks. So people kind of forget about us Gen Xers. But we're there. We have a lot of buying power. We are actually the first generation that did not do as well as our parents' generation for various reasons. So our needs are a little bit different because of that. So I always like to talk about the size, because when you're looking at developing new products and new services with whatever business that you're in, these can kind of help you to understand where you should put most of your time and effort. So obviously, if it's a small generation like the silent generation, you may not want to put a lot of energy into developing more products and services for this group. So just knowing the population size can kind of help you when you're looking to develop other products and services going forward. So, snapshot of these different characteristics. This is something that I also put on a handout because obviously this is very, very small. I'm not going to go through all the specifics of this, but I wanted to make sure I made copies of this so you can take this home. This is what's really going to help you to develop that marketing plan for your products and services that you're gearing towards these generations. So you'll say, well, why? Why is this important? Reason being, if we look at communication preferences, obviously the generation, the greatest generation, those really, really older folks in our society, they're used to that face-to-face interaction, right? They're not used to smartphones, internet, all of that stuff. Now, as we look at those communication preferences as we go throughout the generations, we see here that with the silent generation, they like that formal communication. They like stuff in print. They still talk on the phone. They like that face-to-face communication. So why is this important? If you have a product and you put that product out there, and let's say it has a lot of glitches, it's a technology type of product, and you're like, okay, people may have some issues with the product. Maybe it's hard to sync up, or maybe the instructions aren't clear. The first thing that generation is going to do is try to reach out to someone face-to-face. They're going to want to come to that brick and mortar and talk to somebody, or if they're the baby boomers, they want to get on that telephone and call somebody. So if you just got that website set up and you want them to send an email and you'll get back to them in 24 hours, that generation of baby boomers are going to be pissed because they want to pick up the phone and they want to talk to a person. So knowing these communication preferences of the generation is going to help you to look at that entire marketing strategy for your products and services and make sure that you can hit these folks communication-wise the way they want to be touched. So as we get younger, Generation X, the interesting thing about my generation is we're like the digital immigrants in the sense that we remember a time before the internet, we know what a landline is, but we also have been introduced to the internet, we have had to adapt to smartphones, email, texting, all of that stuff. So Gen X from a communication standpoint is very adaptive. So they may not have that telephone number to call you, but it's okay. they can text you or they can email you, and they're okay with those forms of communication. Now, as we get younger, with our Generation Y and our Generation Z, these folks never knew a time without the internet. So that makes a huge difference, because if your products are only geared towards Gen Y and Gen Z, maybe you don't need that brick and mortar. Maybe you don't need that telephone line, because they're used to texting, they're used to email, they're used to online chat boxes, they're used to all of those different things to communicate, and maybe you don't have to waste the resources in making sure you have a landline or making sure you have a brick and mortar to reach those folks. So this is why it's very important for us to look at things from a generational standpoint, and it's just one facet of looking at our customer. Obviously, this is not an end-all, be-all. Not every person in every generation is in this exact same trend, but remember, it's a trend. So we're looking at overall for entire generation. These are some of the trend lines that make sense for them. Once again, with our younger generation, with Generation Z, we've got the smartphone, we've got Apple Watch. Obviously, with Generation Y, we've got the smartphone and tablets. As you can see, tablets are starting to be phased out. People have their smartwatches, and they just have different ways of communicating. So another reason I gave you guys this to take home with you is because looking at those events or experiences that impacted them can also affect that person's mind in terms of their buying. So you're talking about, World War II, very family dynamics with the silent generation. That obviously is going to have a different effect if you grew up in that time versus if you grew up during COVID or if you grew up during the recession or 9/11. So all of those things kind of impact what's important to people and what isn't. One thing they say a lot about Generation Z is that they really, really care about where they work, they're passionate about where they work, and they don't really care about money as much as long as they're passionate about their jobs and they enjoy them. A lot of that comes from 9/11, because during 9/11, when that happened, everyone's focus shifted. We were concerned about our families. We were concerned about that being around people that cared about us and not just working for the sake of working. And so those parents impacted their children after 9/11, and that's why we have Generation Z that's very passionate about where they work, and that's more important to them than money. So if you kind of see what happened during the formative years of those generations and how it impacted those people that was growing up, parenting at that time, then you can kind of see why the upcoming generation feels the way that they do about certain things. So, of course, since we have so many different businesses, it's very hard to get specifics. But I wanted to make sure that we do some deductive reasoning when we look at those generations and how they're impacted in terms of buying and purchasing. So, the reason I put this consumer buying process here, if you've been through business school, marketing, any type of marketing course, this is definitely something that you've probably heard of. But looking at this from a generational perspective, people are going to have a different spin on this mentally depending on what generation that they're in. So all of these different steps in the process stays the same, but how long you stay within one of those steps makes the difference. So, for example, in the consumer buying process, when we want to buy a car, for example, the first thing we're going to do is recognize that my car is raggedy, it's constantly breaking down, I need to get a new car, right? So that's what we mean about this problem recognition. From there, we start to do searching in terms of information on buying a car, right? So what can I afford? Where's the closest dealership? How big does the car need to be? All of that goes into that information search. Based on that, then we'll look at our alternatives and evaluate. And we may say, you know what, I really love that Lexus, but I can't afford that Lexus. So I might have to look at a Ford product or a Chevy product that's more within my price range versus going for that Lexus that I really like. So when we're looking at those evaluations of alternatives, we're looking at what are some of our deal breakers and whittling down that pool of product so that we can make a purchase decision. we make that purchase decision, and this is the actual process of us going, and we go to the dealership, we test drive a bunch of cars that's within our price range. We kind of know what color we want, if we want a sedan versus an SUV, yada, yada, yada. And then ultimately, we make that purchase, and hopefully, we are happy with that purchase. So we make that actual purchase. Now we're driving home with that new car. We got rid of that raggedy jalopy that we had. And now we're thinking, was this a great buy? Was this the right decision? Is it meeting my needs in that post-purchase evaluation aspect of things? So during that post-purchase evaluation is when we stop and we say, is this the right thing to do or not? Was this a great buy or not? So the reason a lot of companies have those guarantees, warranties, return policies is because in this post-purchase evaluation, if you have a problem and you need to address that problem, how difficult is it for you to get the help that you need? So there is money that needs to be spent from a marketing perspective on that post-purchase evaluation part, because if people are dissatisfied and they can't get a hold of the salesperson, then all of a sudden it has spoiled the entire process. So just think, if you drive home, you hate that car because maybe it's got some funny noise, or it doesn't start up right, or it takes too long to warm up, and you call that dealership and want to speak to that person that sold you the car, and you can't get in touch with them, you're frustrated. So you still got to put some marketing dollars there, even though you figure, hey, I made that sale, life is good. Because this is the difference between a one-time purchase versus a relationship purchase. So that post-purchase evaluation part can make the difference between whether someone continues to come back to your dealership or whether or not they say, these people are horrible, never go there, and they tell anybody that'll listen that they never should buy from them. So all of this is what we all go through when we buy things. Now, I did the car because the car takes a little bit more effort than going to buy a gallon of milk. Depending on what that purchase is, depends on how much time you will spend in each of these different categories. If it's college education, you're going to take a lot of time to figure out where you should go to school, because it's a lot of time, a lot of money that's going to be invested in that purchase. Versus if you're just going to the grocery store to buy salami for a charcuterie board. You don't do a whole lot of decision making when it comes to some of those small, quick, inexpensive purchases. So that being said, how do we meet needs of our customers based on these generational differences that we talked about a couple slides before? So first thing, all I did on each of these slides was just give a couple of different recommendations. It's obviously going to vary depending on what products and services that you offer. So that silent generation that's aged 79 to 96, they're a mixed group. Some of these people are mobile or active, like my great aunt, who is 88 years old and still driving and living on her own and taking care of her friends. However, there are people that's within this group that are not doing so well, and they may be sick, they may be aging, they may be cared for by their children. These may be individuals who are in a nursing home or in assisted living. So their decision-making is obviously going to be affected because they're not making decisions for themselves anymore. Someone else is making those decisions. So that marketing message is going to a different group than the actual generation themselves. So they are not digital communicators. If you learn nothing else from this, understand that people 79 to 96 years old do not like dealing with digital stuff. My great aunt tolerates technology because she doesn't have a choice. She has a home security system, and she had to get the app on her phone, and literally it took her a month. Every time the app messes up, she calls the number, and she makes somebody come out to her house and explain it to her. At 88 years old, yes, this is what she's doing. And she just learned how to text in the last 5 years. It is a blessing because now I can send her pictures and not have to print out the pictures and send them through snail mail to her. So those within this group who are older and still interacting with society, they're going to begrudgingly adapt to some of the technology just because they don't have a choice. But if they don't have to, they won't. Their interaction with technology may be limited to email and or text, but they are not engaging with advertising and promotional marketing efforts. So my great aunt, if you want to sell to her, you need to either send her a catalog, call her on the phone, or when she comes to your brick and mortar, then you can give her, a spiel face-to-face. But in terms of her ever clicking on a social media ad or clicking on a Google banner and stuff, she's never going to do that. Now, they are loyal and already have their preferred products and services, so getting them to switch brands or trying something new may be extremely difficult. So if you're someone that has a brand new product, this generation is not going to be very easy to get them to try that product. So just kind of keep that in mind. They're very loyal to their brands, and it's going to be very difficult for them to try something new. And then finally, products and or services focused on this generation may need to be targeted towards their family members, like I said. And when you're targeting those family members, make sure that your marketing focuses on eliminating pain points. So this is going to save you time. This is going to save you money. This is going to help you be more organized or be more focused on time management. Benefits sought, and with marketing campaigns, focus on problem solving. What problem are you going to solve for the people within that generation, and how is it going to help the generation that may be caregiving for them in the process? Questions up to this point? Okay. I'm sure you guys will have some questions soon. All right. So, baby boomers. These 60 to 78-year-olds are not their parents' generation. They are more active, living very full and dynamic lives. So there used to be a time where, once you hit that magic age of 62, it's time for you to go ahead and retire and live your best life. That is not the case anymore. Sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it's by circumstance. But either way, ultimately, they're not necessarily retiring and sitting on the porch swinging and playing with grandkids. These folks have a whole different passion and a whole different focus than generations before them. So, like I said, they may be continuing to work by choice. They may be continuing to work by circumstances just because they got hit with the recession and it affected their investing or whatever the case may be. Many of them are still working and plan to work longer than their parents, some by choice, some by circumstance, but regardless, they are working. Therefore, they have assimilated to the use of modern-day technology because they're in the workplace. So these folks can necessarily be reached through social media, email, things of that sort, especially the ones that's still working. And so keep that in mind. Don't feel like you can't reach them through digital advertising because you can, because a lot of them are still working. They also may still have traditional media means. So they may still listen to the radio. They may still watch traditional TV. And so that level of advertising may be an option for you if you're looking to reach this group as well. Their first response to a problem is to make a phone call. So like I mentioned before on that one slide, these are the telephone folks. They like talking on the telephone to people. So having a customer service available by phone with a live person is important to them. So like I said, even if you may not have a brick and mortar, if you have a phone number that they can reach out and talk to a live person, this generation is going to appreciate that. Reaching them through social media may not work for them unless it's Facebook. So remember, that generation, had to assimilate and take on social media, and social media to them means Facebook. They're not doing TikTok. They're not doing Instagram. But they probably got 800 people on Facebook, which is their cousins, their kids, their grandkids, everybody else, and all these great networks. So the one good thing about Facebook, I always like to say, is that those networks on Facebook are very deep and extensive. Because you're talking about church members and family members and friends and co-workers and all of these things that have been built for a very long time. So people you're advertising on Facebook because of whatever your product or service is, you have the opportunity to really reach deep and thick roots when it comes to your Facebook population. Because most people on Facebook have very huge followings because they've developed them for years and years and years. Also, your website is important here as well. So SEO, which stands for search engine optimization efforts, are beneficial with this group as well, because the first thing they'll do is Google something, and they'll look for whatever that product or service is that they need through a website. So it is important for you to have that website, which some people may think is obsolete for some of the younger generations. But if you have products and services that's geared toward baby boomers, it's going to be important to still keep that, that old-fashioned website. And then make sure you invest in SEO efforts so that your website comes up higher when someone is Googling a key term or a keyword for your business. Generation X, my lovely generation. So these 44 to 59-year-olds may have a lot on their plate. So this is one of the generations, like I mentioned earlier, that did not do as well financially as the generation before them. These folks are balancing kids and aging parents. And even though aging parents may be more active than before, there's still a large portion of this generation that is taking care of their elders. So they got a lot going on. Time management stuff is important for them because they don't have a whole lot of time. They barely have time to take care of their own needs if they're taking care of their kids and taking care of their parents as well. So career issues, obviously this generation was really touched with recession stuff. I know in my career alone, I've had 3 layoffs. So I've been up and down in terms of compensation. I've been up and downs in terms of being able to save and invest and all that for my retirement. So obviously I'm not 100% unique. There's a lot of people in that generation that's been affected by that. So Generation X are what they call those latchkey kids, meaning those kids that came home after school by themselves to an empty home because their parents were out working. And that has given them a lot of independence. So they were independent early on, and because of that, it's affected who they are as adults. So they're fiercely independent, aggressively pivoting when necessary. So whether it is divorcing and remarrying, never getting married at all, having kids later in life, it's amazing. At my age, I have friends that have brand new babies, and I have friends that have grown kids that have babies. So it's kind of weird to talk to your friend and they're like, yeah, you know, my 3rd grandchild was born. I'm like, really? And then you got this other friend that's like, guess what? I'm pregnant and I'm 48. It's like, what? So it's just kind of weird. But hey, to each his own. Hey, do you? We only got one life to live, right? So some people chose not to attend college. Others did. They may have the student loan debt to prove for that. And so this generation is very change embracive, meaning that, hey, if something bad hits my path, I know how to pivot and do something different. Versus maybe the baby boomers who, I hate my job, but I've been here 25 years, so I ain't going nowhere. You know, so this generation is not that. As a generation that's open to change, remember, they grew up in the age of TV, lived through cassettes, CDs, to now streaming music, and have not only embraced the personal computer, but smartphones, tablets, laptops, and other mobile technology. Therefore, they are open to receiving marketing communication in a variety of different forms. So, once again, marketing messages that target their pain points and how can we solve them, how can we be beneficial to them, are going to be the most impactful. So, whether you point out this is saving you time, saving you money, helping you be more efficient in your household work or whatever the case may be, those are the pain points that they're looking to have satisfied. So they talk about this, and I did not show this on the population slide because there's been researchers that talk about this. But in between that Generation X and the millennials, there is this hybrid that seems to have evolved, and it's called the Zennials. So the Zennials are basically people that's on the high end of Generation X in terms of age, but the low end of Generation Z. So their age is 39 to 47. These are people on the cusp of Generation X or the millennials. So they're born between 77 and 85. They're overlapping the 2 generations before and after them. So they have this rather unique timeline because they're optimistic about certain things, but then very cynical about other things. They're super adaptive because of what I mentioned before with the Gen Xers. And because they've been born into this age of technology, they understand how to use analog systems, but they've adapted to the digital systems that we have today. From a work perspective, they are great team players. They don't have a problem being a part of a team. Some generations, like the baby boomers, they want to be the leader. They want to be the one that gives all the demands and gives all the instruction, whereas this hybrid of Zennials are very team-oriented. Unlike the millennials who were exposed to social media very early on, all of the Zennials had a social media-free childhood. Therefore, they don't share the same obsession that millennials have for validation from strangers online. So you know how it goes with these younger folks. If someone puts one mean comment, they're like, "Rah, what is this?" You know. But these folks are easily adaptable. They are used to change. They're independent-minded. So they're okay. They're not going to be on social media and TikTok all the time, posting videos, just selfies of, look how cute I am, look at my outfit of the day. They're not doing that stuff. So they were impacted by 9/11, the Great Recession. They had just graduated. Many of these folks had student loans and other things. They also just entered the workforce and were at risk of losing their jobs. This is as opposed to the millennials who were still in college at the time, and unlike the older Gen Xers who were at risk of losing their homes, investments, or retirement savings. So someone in one of the research said, we landed in a fleeting sweet spot before the recession that plagued millennials' launch, yet we were still young enough that when the market crashed, we hadn't yet invested much and didn't lose as many homes or as much in retirement savings as older Gen Xers. So Zennials had a more relaxed childhood because their parents weren't overly obsessed with their lives. The millennials can't say the same. Their parents tend to be obsessed with success and try to push them as hard as possible. So just think about some of these things and how it can impact that consumer buying process and how they buy your products and your services. So just good to know that these Zennials exist, and these are the folks that's 39 to 47. Generation Y, 28 to 43-year-olds. This is the largest generation, which is why so many companies are wanting to captivate and sell to this group. So if you're wondering, why are they always talking about millennials? Why millennials? Why millennials? Because they are a bigger group of folks than the baby boomers now. And they're in that money-making years, so they've got money to spend and money to burn, and they have things that they have to purchase, whether it's the new home, the car, child care services, things of that sort. Many in this generation are choosing themselves, whether it's skipping parenting altogether, skipping college, or skipping traditional work. They're loudly choosing not to walk the same path as their parents and their grandparents. So I'm sure all of you guys know a millennial where you just feel like, when is this kid going to grow up? They have changed jobs the last 5 years. They've been to 3 or 4 different jobs. Well, that's the reason why. If they don't like it, they're not passionate about it, they're like, why should I put up with it? I tell my mom all the time, I'm like, when my family eats, I eat. So that's it. I don't have any kids, so I don't have to stay at a job 30 years for good benefits. I don't have nobody dependent on me. I can do what I want to do. Why should I be miserable? So obviously, I'm not a millennial. I'm more of that Zennial. But there's a lot of young folks that saying, hey, I don't have kids. If I want to move across the country, if I want to take a year and backpack in Europe, that's what I'm going to do because this is my life and I'm going to live it. However, as they skip tradition, skipping social media is not an option for marketers wanting a piece of this generation's wallet. Social media strategy is the primary way this generation finds out about new products and services. So this huge generation are all over social media. So if you as a business or working for a company, if your company is not investing in social media, you're missing out on a lot of money, especially if you have products and services that's trying to reach this group. So keep that in mind that you got to be on Instagram, you got to be on TikTok, you got to have some presence outside of Facebook, because don't act like you be like, oh, I'm doing social media, see, I'm on Facebook. No, if you want to reach these folks, you got to be on something other than Facebook. As a generation accustomed to always having information at their fingertips, marketing messages must be honest and transparent, even if they are wrapped in fun and silly trends and viral moments. So, one thing about millennials and folks that's younger than the millennials is, remember back in the day, and I'm showing my age, when you had to do a research paper for college and you had to go to the library and pull out that little drawer and go through all these little cards, information was not free. Now it is. So folks can easily find out if you're lying, if you're over-embellishing, all of this. And this generation that is so super savvy with digital stuff, they can easily find out if you're really the best product for X, Y, and Z. So don't say, hey, we're the best product in the world for this, because if it's not true, these folks are going to find out. So you got to be honest and transparent about whatever it is that you're selling, because these folks will follow up and find out if you're lying or not. Also, as a generation that does not know a time without the internet, they are bombarded with millions of messages per day, meaning marketing campaigns have to cut through the noise. So, one, you got to be out there. But two, in order for you to be impactful, you've got to have a message that stands out amongst the millions of messages that these folks see every day. So consider that going forward. One, the first step is to be out there. So if you only got Facebook, one, we need to get you on some other social media platforms. And then two, once you're on those platforms, how do you stick out? Because just think about when you look at the app for this conference. You know, you're seeing all of these different messages and this and that. Like, how do you make inroads with folks when they're seeing so many different messages every day from so many different areas? So, my Generation Z, 12 to 27-year-olds are 100% dependent on technology. They are used to having information at their fingertips 24/7. As the third largest generation, they cannot be ignored. So obviously, if you are marketing products to kids, these folks are entering those teenage years. But on the older end of Generation Z, these are folks that are out of college, working in their careers, living on their own. So consider that if you're looking at marketing to Generation Z based on your products and services. The youngest within this generation are fully immersed in social media, and they are marketed to by peers through TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. The oldest ones within this generation are making money through various means and are making decisions on marriage, parenting, home ownership, and more that is shifting and reshaping traditional norms. They are more pragmatic in their career choices and expect economic trouble, so they plan for it. They are collaborative and self-reliant individuals. So you will notice a lot of people in this Generation Z, a lot of them are minimalists, meaning they'll have an apartment and they just have a couch and a chair and, you know, maybe a kitchen table. They don't have a whole lot of tchotchkes and extra stuff. Reason being, if the job market, you know, dries up where they're at, they have no problem selling that stuff on marketplaces and moving somewhere else. So they have seen their parents, their grandparents go through, you know, layoffs or job changes and things of that sort, and these folks are prepared. So they're not spending a whole lot of money on 10 pairs of shoes. They might buy one good pair of boots that cost them, you know, $500, but previous generations that maybe have to buy 10 pairs of boots all in different colors, this generation is more minimalist because they are planning for any type of adversity so that they can kind of pivot and go in a different direction. This generation is passionate about their causes and issues like climate change and sustainability efforts. They are willing to pay more for products that help these causes. So this is definitely a generation that has their passion points. And so maybe you give away a percentage of your sales for a nonprofit. This is something that this generation will gravitate towards in your marketing message. So I used to work for Panera Bread, and they donated, you know, their bread at the end of the night to different shelters and stuff. Well, when I first started working there, they did not publicize that. And then people were like, well, why aren't you telling folks about this? You know what I'm saying? This is awesome that you're doing this. And then you start seeing it more in marketing messages. Why? Because these folks start coming to age and they start shopping at Panera, going there for sandwiches, soup, salads, or whatever. And so they want to hear about how you're giving back. They want to know how you care about, you know, people outside of yourselves as a company. That's important to them. So if you're doing that in your company and you're reaching Generation Z, definitely look at adding that into your marketing campaigns, however you're giving back to your local communities. They are driven by strong community, financial stability, entrepreneurship, and overall are ambitious and have a goal-oriented mindset. So a lot of these people are also TikTok influencers or started their own businesses where they're doing social media marketing companies. So they're not necessarily going into the office and working a 40-hour work week. They're not necessarily looking for that traditional office work, but they are holding their own and starting their own businesses and self-sustaining themselves. And so these outliers that I mentioned earlier to you guys, I just did one little slide that kind of sums up the oldest generation and the youngest generation. So our 97 to 123-year-old folks, they're not making many purchases. Their family members are making decisions that's in their best interest. So if you have a great-grandparent or a grandparent that falls within this age, 9 times out of 10, you're making decisions for them. So your marketing message should be geared more towards the family members, making those decisions for them versus directly to those people themselves. And then your Gen Alpha folks, these little children, as the rise of YouTube toy reviewers continues, many and more children are being marketed to by other children. So just kind of keep that in mind, that now necessarily we don't need parents or adults that's marketing towards children. Children are marketing towards other children, and that's just happening organically through social media. So here's some key takeaways. There's no one-size-fits-all to marketing, and generational differences are just another way to segment your target markets. Even within the generations, there are differences. However, generational trends can give you insight into your consumer that can help you create a more targeted marketing strategy that can increase sales. And then understanding generational characteristics can also help you to create future products and services as you recognize the needs and wants of these generational markets. So that being said, what are some of the questions that we have? Now, I know I wasn't that good. Somebody got a question. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
I did have a question, listening simply, and how do you stay organic in a business world of, say, everything I'm hearing here is social media, so we know technology is taking over everything. But I fit pretty much the bonus hybrid, so I don't gel too well with social media. I have none of it whatsoever. I stay congruent to what I need to, but in having a business, and I work with energy healing, I kind of like to stay, I don't know, natural with it and not feel like wide and broad. So how do one person like myself stay organic to what I believe in, but yet still meet the demands of the consumer? Because advertising and marketing will be kind of where my failure is right now, so I'm here reaching out. But how can I go about it without compromising my health and sanity?
I completely understand. Now, how you've already grown your business up to this point, we never want to alienate our base. So whoever your target customer is, and you may know, maybe they are individuals that's within the same age group as yourself. If that's your core component, then we definitely don't want to alienate those folks. So you want to continue doing what you need to do. But as you grow and you want to expand, that's when you have to start looking at social media as an option, especially if you want to reach these other generations. So, you know, I don't know what people's background may be, but that whole 80-20 rule still does apply. So 80% of your revenue is being driven by your top 20% of the customers. Get as specific as you can with that 20%. Get as specific as you can. When I worked for Panera, And I worked for Panera from 2005 to 2008, so this was quite a while ago. But they knew their target market was a Caucasian woman between the ages of 25 to 45 that was more than likely married, that was college educated, that considered herself a foodie, and that more than likely had children. That's how specific they drilled down to who that person is. So that's what you need to do with your business. And when you do that, then you'll be able to see who that person is and where they fall within this generational stuff. If that person, when you get to your specifics, is your generation and how you are reaching them now is working for you, then fine, do that. Then you've got the time to explore the social media organically as you continue to grow. But you never want to alienate your base. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
How can you collect the information to identify your generation, data, like, so you can identify if you already have an existing business? Other than just looking at maybe like a Facebook meta to tell you what the data says, but how else can you do that?
What industry are you in, your business? Okay, so currently, even if you have to do it manually, when people come in and buy from you, just take note, are they women, are they within a certain age group and things of that sort. You may have to build that big data on your own. Most people are investing in the apps and all that stuff that can capture that data for you. Also, if you have an email list, do you do email blasts to your folks? Sometimes you can pull statistical information from those email blasts. So based on people who signed up, are they women, are they men, are they of a certain age, are they in a certain geographical area? So start with whatever you're doing digitally now and see if you can pull some stats from that. If you can't, you might just have to go and start bean counting so you can figure out who those folks are. Now, yes? Yep, exactly. So do you use a CRM system now with your email blasting?
I do, but I just thought about having agent there.
So yeah, if you're using a CRM system, that all should be in there from an age perspective. So you'll be able to see what your average age is, what some of your outline age is, so you can get a range of folks. And then you can start doing a little bit more of a deep dive beyond just age. Because obviously the generational stuff is great. It's another facet to your marketing, but it's not the end-all be-all. If you're dealing with women in Kansas City, what do they have in common? What are some of their trends? If you're dealing with men in Chicago, what are their trends and things of that sort? So age is one facet of it, but obviously it's not the end-all be-all, but it's definitely going to help you to make some inroads and hopefully gain some sales. Other questions? Very good questions. Yes, ma'am?
I don't know if this is just a comment that a lot of the baby boomers get scammed very easily because they don't know how to go on the internet to understand that phone is a scam.
Yes.
That email is a scam.
Yes.
Just observation from dealing with my mom.
Well, and just think about it from that perspective. When the baby boomers was coming through, information was not free. If you didn't go to college, then you didn't know things. They didn't have information just readily available at your fingertips. You either had to read a book, that meant going to the library and doing some research, or going to college and learning through different college courses, and that's not the case anymore. So it is a lot harder for those baby boomers that haven't adapted to digital means to be able to easily go online and disseminate if this is a scam or not, because they're just not used to growing up in that generation. But that's why they have you, so you can help. Even my great aunt at 88, she has friends that are not in as good as health as she is, and they've gotten scammed by people that's calling on the phone and claiming to be their health insurance company, and next thing you know, they've changed their health care provider. So at the end of the day, if you're dealing with baby boomers, silent generation, and folks that are still living on their own and they may be susceptible to being scammed, I would suggest just being more diligent and helping them to maneuver through that. Yeah. Yes?
So if you're selling business to business, how do you kind of sell within the generation?
That's a great,
Those jobs that's been there
That's a great question. So B2B, definitely look at who the decision makers are. Who are the decision makers at that business? And that can give you some insight from a generational standpoint. So if you're working directly with the CEO of a business and he's in the baby boomer generation, that can give you some idea of where his head is at and how he would like to be communicated to. Now, if you're working with a procurement officer in a particular department, and that procurement officer may be a younger person, then they may be more interested in the digital communication, the text messages, things of that sort. So I think when it gets to B2B, look at who you're dealing with within that business, because the generation is still impacting their mindset, even if they're working for a company or a business. Does that make sense? All right, fantastic. Other questions? All right, well, I did give you guys handouts, and the reason I did that is, like I said, on this first page, if you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to do so. I didn't put my phone number or anything on here just because I didn't want some wackos to start, like, texting me at 3 in the morning or something crazy. But if you would like to contact me by phone, I'm more than happy to give you that. So like I said, I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I just started a YouTube channel. It's just my recipes on there. So it's not anything business related. I'm just doing YouTube shorts and kind of dipping my foot in this whole YouTube thing. But I've done a variety of different things. If you're looking for someone to help you with the data analytics piece, let's say you've got that CRM system, you've got some big data that you want to get some real statistical analysis to, please reach out to me because I can help you with that. Any type of startup consulting, or if you're looking to get into another industry or launch a new product or service, please reach out to me. I used to own a restaurant. I still work a lot with restaurants, so if you need someone with a restaurant background to help with menu planning or other consulting, please do. I hate to see locally owned restaurants close because of something that we could have fixed. So if you know a restaurateur that's struggling, please, please, please have them to reach out to me. So that concludes my presentation. If you have other personal questions, please stay behind. If you'd like to get my phone number to reach out to me, please do. I did reach out to all of you all on the app and sent a little message, so I will follow up and send you guys a message afterwards. So if you're on the app, please interact with me, and thank you so much for being here. Awesome, awesome.